Hi everyone, it's Sarah. I'm here to talk to you about student and parent involvement while creating and implementing IEPs. This is a topic that has meant a lot to me over the years, and I'm excited to share some research and data with you. So you can take a few minutes to kind of reflect based upon the school year or based upon just your educational career in general. We've all been participants in IEP meetings at some point, whether you're the special education teacher leading the meeting, you're the gen ed teacher providing classroom data, if you're the specials teacher who comes in to report on inclusion, or if you're a parent of a child and your own child has an IEP, I'm sure that you have some feelings toward IEP meetings. And so just kind of take a minute to sit with those emotions and sit with how those meetings went this school year. I had a few over remote learning, very odd, very new. I don't know if any of you had to do any remote learning slash Zoom or Skype IEP meetings, but how did those go? And then think about how active your students and parents were. Not just if they were at the meeting, but how did they ask questions? Did they ask any questions? How did they feel about it? Did they have positive or negative things to say about what was happening at school? Were your students invited to the meeting? Did they contribute? Just kind of all of those different things. The IEP process is so different for so many people, and so just kind of sit with that as we go through it. So parent involvement. Parents are the primary advocates for their children. We do so much more than just stand up at the front of a room and teach math or teach academic content. You might have anywhere from 10 kids on a caseload to, if you're a high school teacher rotating around, you might work with 100 plus students a day. But at the end of the day, no matter how much time we spend with those kids, their parents know them best. So that's where family involvement and communication is really important, and it really does encourage student growth within students who have educational plans. In collaborating with these families and making them equal members of the educational team, we establish a really successful foundation for student growth. I had a parent a few years ago when we went into an IEP meeting and I said something about us being a great team, or we worked really well as a team. The parent had said to me, I have never been told that I was a member of the IEP team before. Her son was in 8th grade and we were working on the transition and stuff, and she had told me that past teachers have always said the IEP team are the people at school. And I think that that's a huge misconception because parents play such a vital role in supporting their children at home, in supporting us, that without them being part of our team, there's no way a plan can be successful. So parents often indicate they might feel overwhelmed or apprehensive when it comes to their child's IEP meeting. They might feel unprepared due to the lack of experience and the amount of jargon present within meetings. Jargon's a huge thing, especially within special education. There are so many different terms and so many different acronyms that I don't think I'll ever be able to remember them all. I don't know any teacher who would. And so what you can do that I found really helpful is if you get a cheat sheet online that kind of goes over the very basic acronyms, and if they're present in an IEP, make sure to print that out and share it with the parent so they know what you're talking about. They don't know all of these terms. Even if they are teachers, some of them might be different from where they teach. So that can really help level the playing field. The uncertainty, the overwhelmed, apprehensiveness, that leads to a tense meeting where parents aren't active participants. They're passive participants. Sure, they're there, they're nodding, they're making eye contact with you, but they're probably thinking in the back of their head, what are you talking about? What is going on? They're so overwhelmed. They're flooded with new information from several different people. And so make sure that you're able to kind of talk to them prior to the IEP meeting. A mini conference strategy is one that I was reading about in some research that I was doing. And it supports parents by providing them information prior to the meeting. but not only printing something out and handing it to them, having a conversation with them about what's on it. So this way they kind of know what they're walking into, and they can come prepared with some questions to ask you or ask you on the phone prior to the meeting. So a mini conference is a short agenda that reviews the different components within the IEP and the student's data that's been collected. It's typically done with the parent in person or over the phone after the draft paperwork has been sent home. The case manager will review the information with the parent and then gain information regarding any questions or concerns that they have. In August, Governor Pritzker passed a House bill that said that data collection and draft evaluations must be sent home at least 3 school days prior to an IEP meeting. This does encourage parent involvement and aligns with the mini conference strategy that was being talked about to kind of alleviate any uncertainty for family members. Along with a long list of acronyms, special education laws are constantly changing. And toward the beginning of this school year, I was able to go to a PD session with some of the lawyers that work closely with our school and some surrounding districts. And they presented a really great slideshow and gave us a handout about all of the laws that have changed or are changing or in process. And it was really helpful just to know what I was expected to do. This whole draft situation that happened in August is obviously new. Your past district might have said send paperwork home a week before time, and I know that sometimes as educators you're kind of like, oh my gosh, now I have to have everything done like 2 weeks before the meeting, do this, do that, and it's really hard, it's really difficult. So the law is 3 school days. If your meeting's on a Monday, that means it has to be sent home like Tuesday after school so that the parents have Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday to look it over. But that really does help them know what's coming. And then on these next 2 slides, these are just some cutouts that I got from the Jones article where it was just kind of a sample of what a mini conference could look like. And I only took 2 screenshots. It was a pretty long document because it covers all the basis of an IEP, but I really like the language on here, just because it talks about how this is a first attempt to get some ideas done. This isn't a final copy. You're asking them for questions. You're thanking them for their time. It's really just kind language. I mean, there's really no other way to put it. But you can pause and read through all of this. I won't read it all to you. And then this one was another one. And number 13, I think, was really important, and it's going to help me. It's my goal to kind of bring this phrasing into my next IEP meeting. But it says, ask me a question about the different educational settings. So it doesn't say what questions do you have. It says, ask me a question about it. And you can phrase this for anything. Ask me a question about the accommodations your son is receiving in math class. Ask me about the accommodations your daughter is receiving. Do you think we could add more? Do you understand what all of these mean? It kind of opens the door. A lot of parents won't just flat out ask questions if they're not confident, and not every single parent is confident with this process. So this will really help. You can obviously look through it with the article, but I found this just kind of really helpful in general. Communication is key. The key to a successful IEP meeting is strong communication. Open communication with families lead to increased meaningful engagement and allowing families to support their children at home. I know that there have been some situations where you're like, I'm working so hard on this at school, but then the parent does it for them at home. And you fight this battle of it's not consistent. And so getting parents on board and communicating with them about the importance of keeping the plan in place and using the plan still while at home to kind of reinforce some life skills. That way you're both on the same page and you can kind of remove that barrier. Some additional tips to foster positive communication throughout an IEP meeting are a pre-meeting, so that's kind of like the mini conference, determining a meeting facilitator. Typically, special ed teachers or case managers are the meeting facilitator or maybe your LEA rep. Creating and sharing a meeting agenda. establishing some ground rules that goes like with the team on, and it kind of aligns with the next one, team members being aware of their roles and speaking times. So you're kind of reviewing maybe if Stacy's mom had some questions about her PT, you talk to the PT ahead of time and say, hey, I just wanted to let you know she contacted me about some PT stuff. Here you go. When we get to your part, make sure you address it. And then to obviously limit the amount of jargon. So the following tips allow your meeting to run smoothly and take the parents into account while discussing the data collection. If you have all of this planned out, you're not going to be stumbling over words. You're not going to be confused. You're going to be ready for any kind of questions that are going to come about. Your parents will feel strong enough to ask questions. This kind of just assures that the meeting goes smoothly and no one feels surprised or your meeting doesn't run longer than you had hoped it to. For a meeting agenda, this is an example that my school district uses. We have different agendas for different types of IEP meetings. Obviously, if there's a transition meeting, we have a transition agenda. If there's an annual review, a reval, anything new, we have an agenda for it. And this I found extremely helpful for remote Zooms when I did, remote IEP Zooms, when I did Zooms with parents over, when I did IEPs for them. I would send this to the parents and I kind of put in some very general information. And then I put the name of the person who was going to speak to that next to it. So they were aware of who was speaking about what at what time. And I had the agenda in front of me just so I can kind of follow along, and I still like check or highlight after I've covered something so that I know I've touched on all of the key elements. These are really simple to make. We just have them shared with our entire team and we have them in our conference room so you can grab one. If you don't fill it out, you don't want to, you just still have like a checklist of what order. This gives the parents an opportunity, though, if you do give it to them ahead of time, maybe they can highlight an area. If they have questions about assistive tech, they can highlight it, and then they can know when to ask their question. It helps them a little bit. Individuals with disabilities often lack self-determination skills as much as their educational plan is laid out for them through team and parent decisions. This kind of struck a chord for me because it's sad, but it's true. We do make a majority of the educational decisions for our students. They aren't making the direct decisions in their learning. And how do we expect them to be self-advocates and be involved when we don't teach them? So we can't just go into an IEP meeting and say, oh, Sam, introduce yourself. Tell them about your goals. We have to determine their choice-making skills, problem-solving skills, decision-making, self-evaluation, and self-awareness. Collecting this data will really assist the team in creating meaningful IEP goals and probably give you information onto maybe something that you can include that you didn't know. And then these are some references for my research and some additional. Thank you.